In 1991, the guy who defined the 80s teen heartthrob archetype walked away from millions to build furniture in Pennsylvania. 35 years. Just gone. Why do so many huge stars vanish at the exact peak of their fame? You see the archival footage of screaming crowds. You watch the old news broadcasts tracking their every move. Everyone calls leaving career suicide. It isn't. It's survival, and I can prove it. Take Michael Schoeffling. He delivered that quiet confidence in a defining 80s teen romance, becoming an instant idol. Fans plastered his face on bedroom walls. Magazines tracked his every move. Then, silence. He vanished. Now 65, he shapes wood with his hands, crafting custom furniture in a secluded Pennsylvania workshop. Consider that for a second. The guy who could have commanded any paycheck walked away and spent 3 decades working with tools. No desperate reunion specials captured on cheap vlog cameras. Building furniture. He traded flashing cameras for sawdust, and he won. The industry assumes nobody walks away happily. Phoebe Cates proved them wrong. She was the very center of pop culture after starring in an iconic 80s high school coming-of-age classic, the kind of fame that traps people. But she opened a boutique called Blue Tree on Madison Avenue in 2005. It became the kind of place where you could actually meet her. No bodyguards. No frantic publicists doing damage control. Just Phoebe Cates selling you a candle. Married to Kevin Kline for 37 years, she ignored the Hollywood machine entirely. She chose reality. Some of them learned this lesson even earlier. Carrie Henn was just 9 years old when James Cameron cast her in an acclaimed 1986 sci-fi masterpiece. It became one of the biggest blockbusters of the decade. And what did she do next? Nothing. Not a single thing. She walked away in 1986 to pursue a normal education. You can find recent interviews where she speaks with complete clarity. Not because she failed to secure representation, because she actually wanted a normal life. She teaches elementary school now. How many child stars can honestly say their story ended that well? It's a brutal reality of the business. The younger you start, the harder it is to leave cleanly. But Danny Lloyd managed the impossible. He delivered chilling intensity in a famous psychological thriller filmed in 1980. The production was notoriously exhausting. Yet, Lloyd retired in 1982 after a single television project, choosing to live entirely outside the spotlight. Archival documentaries show how his parents aggressively shielded him on set. Now 53, he teaches biology at a community college. Students occasionally recognize his face from vintage photos online. He erased his celebrity status to explain cellular mitosis. Genius, right? Then you have the dynasties. Bridget Fonda brought rare vulnerability to a gripping 1992 thriller about a dangerous roommate. The media expected her to reign for decades. Instead, she has been retired for 24 years. 2.5 decades of complete radio silence. Her final appearance was in a 2002 television project, and then she evaporated. In August 2026, paparazzi caught her in Los Angeles. She looked directly at the cameras and told reporters she has zero desire to return because her private life is simply too sweet to sacrifice. No PR-approved dodging, just no. If this level of clear self-awareness is hitting different, take a second to hit like. It genuinely helps push this to more people who need to see the truth about fame. Sometimes the pivot feels like a rebellion. Barret Oliver brought childlike wonder to a large-scale 1984 fantasy spectacle. His final major project wrapped in 1989. Then he threw a wild curveball. Historic photography. He became a master of 19th century photographic techniques, preserving obscure chemical processes that most modern digital photographers cannot even comprehend. You watch educational videos about historic tintypes today, and there he is. A 52-year-old expert explaining the delicate chemistry of vintage exposure times. That is a total philosophical rejection of modern celebrity culture. He found magic in the real world. The same goes for Charlie Korsmo. He brought clever wit to a beloved 90s fantasy adventure about a flying boy who grew up. Korsmo stepped away from acting after 1998. He went to MIT. He studied physics. Then he shattered expectations again by conquering Yale Law School. Today, at 48, he teaches corporate law courses. From fighting pirates on a multi-million-dollar soundstage to grilling law students about securities regulation in a sterile lecture hall. The range on that trajectory is hard to imagine. He survived his early fame and completely outgrew it. Jeff Cohen took a similar route, but he stayed closer to home. He provided the manic comic timing for a celebrated 1985 kids' treasure-hunting adventure. Instead of chasing diminishing returns in teen comedies, Cohen went to school and became an entertainment attorney. He co-founded a prominent law firm in Los Angeles. Now 52, he represents the exact kind of young talent he used to be 40 years ago. Recognize the power of that. Instead of abandoning the industry, he conquered the boardroom side of it. He reads the contracts. He protects the kids. Brilliant. Protection is exactly what young actors need. Mara Wilson proved why. She was the beating heart of a beloved 1996 fantasy film about a genius little girl. The camera loved her. The public adored her. But Wilson stepped away from mainstream film acting in the year 2000. Why? Because she looked herself up on the early internet at age 12. Imagine that. 12 years old, reading grown adults ruthlessly dissecting her physical appearance on message boards. She refused to participate. She became a writer. She published raw, honest essays about the psychological toll of growing up famous. Her refusal changed the conversation entirely. Fame happens in an instant. The fallout lasts a lifetime. Ariana Richards was 13 when a pioneering 1993 dinosaur blockbuster made her globally recognizable overnight. News broadcasts showed lines wrapping around city blocks. The sheer intensity was suffocating. So she stepped back. She poured her energy into fine art. She became a widely successful oil landscape painter. You can find documentary footage of her in her studio, completely at peace. She established a respected fine art career. She exhibited her pieces in elite galleries. She found a quiet space where the audience evaluates the work, not her face. She took back her power. Leelee Sobieski felt the exact same friction. She anchored a high-budget 1998 disaster film about a comet hitting Earth. She had the distinctive, ethereal presence executives obsess over. But the reality of the work was miserable. Sobieski retired in 2012. She went on the record, stating clearly that she felt deeply uncomfortable performing forced romantic scenes. She rebranded herself under her married name, Leelee Kimmel, and transitioned into the contemporary visual arts scene. She paints enormous, abstract canvases that sell in professional galleries. Still retired, still painting, still refusing to compromise her boundaries for a paycheck. Sometimes, the exit is a perfect lesson in timing. Portia de Rossi brought razor-sharp timing to the critically acclaimed television series Arrested Development. She was a comedic force, but she didn't cling to the spotlight until it faded. De Rossi announced her retirement on a daytime talk show in 2018. She explained calmly that she wanted to launch an art curation business and step away from acting entirely. No tearful farewell tour, just a live television interview where she looked at the camera, said she was done, and meant it. She spent years building her business infrastructure behind the scenes. Perfect. Sara quietly executed a similar fade. She became the definitive teen dream in a storied 1986 comedy about skipping school. Her elegant charm defined an era of youth culture. But instead of fighting for relevance, Sara shifted her creative energy. She stepped back to raise her family. Then she started writing poetry. Real, published poetry. By 2013, she was functionally retired from screen acting. She didn't announce her departure with a grand press release. She just stopped returning the calls. She traded a script written by someone else for words she generated from her own soul. A deep, personal victory. And then there are the ones who just evaporate. Jonathan Taylor Thomas dominated 90s culture. His boyish charm turned the sitcom Home Improvement into a juggernaut. He was on every magazine cover. Then, right before the final season, he quit. He left television at the very peak of his leverage to attend college. He studied philosophy and history at Harvard and Columbia. He did some minor directing, and then he largely vanished. No social media presence, no desperate reality show appearances, no podcast complaining about his childhood. Just gone. He secured his education and walked away from the circus. Karyn Parsons used her sitcom fame for something much bigger. She was hilarious on The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. Her flawless timing made her character a true icon. But Parsons didn't spend the rest of her life attending nostalgia conventions. She founded Sweet Blackberry, a brilliant nonprofit organization. They produce animated educational content about unsung Black heroes for children. She redirected her broad cultural platform toward history and education. She builds curriculums that traditional school systems actively ignore. Consider the impact of that choice. She chose to educate the next generation. That is a legacy that crushes any network ratings victory. Allison Lohman faced the Hollywood machine and walked. She delivered a sharp, emotional performance in a deeply powerful 2002 dramatic film. Critics praised her intense focus. The industry tried to mold her into the next definitive dramatic lead. But Lohman stepped back after having children. she eventually transitioned to working directly as an acting coach. She trains young performers who are trying to navigate the exact same ruthless industry pressures she survived. She never failed. She simply walked away because her priorities shifted. Now she acts as a shield, helping young talent avoid brutal psychological burnout. But even the most hardened veterans eventually decide they've had enough. Gene Hackman's exit is the stuff of legend. He anchored a classic 1971 crime thriller with an intensity modern actors can only dream of imitating. 2 Academy Awards, over 100 credits. And in 2004, he packed it up. He moved to Santa Fe, New Mexico, and published several historical fiction novels and thrillers over the years. Studios offered him large checks just to do voiceover work, and he rejected every single one. Why? Because he was done. He passed away in February 2025 at 95 years old, succumbing to heart disease and Alzheimer's. The devastating part? It happened just days after his wife died from hantavirus. Their bodies were discovered together in February 2025. How does that even happen? You conquer the world, retire to the desert, and your final chapter is losing the person you built that sanctuary with. Heartbreaking. Sean Connery also chose a quiet exit, but on an island. He set the standard for the classic cinematic spy franchise starting in 1962. His voice, his presence, his firm refusal to suffer fools. He was the archetype. Connery retired in 2006. He retreated to the Bahamas. He stayed completely away from the flashing cameras and the desperate red carpet culture. He passed away in October 2020 at his home in Nassau. No comeback attempts. No final interview circuit to sell a memoir. Just a clean break. He knew exactly when the game stopped being fun, and he simply stopped playing. Generations of actors went on to step into the iconic role. They never found one. Sometimes the exit is forced by tragedy. Rick Moranis lived this. He was the lovable, awkward dad in a blockbuster 1989 family comedy about shrinking kids. Audiences genuinely loved him. But in 1997, Moranis stepped back from everything to raise his 2 children after his wife suddenly passed away. He prioritized his family over his career in an industry that usually demands the exact opposite. Now, 73 archival news reports confirm he officially signed on to return for a much-anticipated sci-fi spoof sequel slated for 2027. That is a 30-year hiatus. 30 years. He's coming back because his kids are grown, he's ready, and the terms are entirely his own. Cameron Diaz proved that retirement is fluid. Her infectious energy turned a colossal 1998 romantic comedy into an undeniable box office sensation. She was the highest-paid actress in the world. And then she just hit the brakes. Diaz officially confirmed her retirement in 2018. She did audio interviews explaining how she desperately needed to reclaim her personal life. She launched extensive wellness ventures. Everyone assumed she was gone forever. Then, in 2022, she announced a return for a major streaming project with Jamie Foxx. Sound familiar? It's the ideal power move. You build a fortune outside the machine and return only when the contract matches your exact demands. Meg Ryan rewrote her own script in a similar way. She defined the modern romantic comedy in a timeless 1989 classic set in New York. Her sparkling charm was weaponized by studios to generate billions. But as the industry shifted in the 2000s, Ryan refused to desperately cling to ingenue roles. She stepped back. She took control of the camera. She started directing. She returned sporadically, entirely on her own schedule, including a 2023 project she both directed and starred in. If the executives wouldn't give her the right material, she was going to generate it herself. She controls the lens now. That takes genuine courage. Daniel Day-Lewis is the greatest wild card. His methodical immersion turned a film about a ruthless oilman into an undeniable cinematic masterpiece. The man has 3 Academy Awards. He announced his definitive retirement in 2017 after a critically acclaimed historical drama. But let's be honest, he takes years between projects anyway. Archival documentaries show him learning to make shoes in Italy during his previous hiatuses. His retirement looks exactly like his normal working rhythm. The industry treats his absence like a tragedy, but it's really just a negotiation tactic with his own muse. He doesn't work for Hollywood. Hollywood waits for him. Geena Davis didn't retire. She went to war. She brought fearless physicality to an influential 1991 feminist road trip film. It was a cultural earthquake. But Davis ignored the urge to accept her awards and buy a private island. She looked at the data. In 2004, she founded an institute dedicated to researching how women and girls are portrayed on screen. She uses hard statistics to force systemic change in casting and storytelling. She takes meetings with executives and drops undeniable data on their desks. She proved that changing the industry from the outside is infinitely more powerful than memorizing lines for another sequel. Macaulay Culkin survived the highest stakes imaginable. His mischievous charm turned a 1990 holiday film about a kid left behind into a global institution. The fame was toxic. The family dysfunction was heavily documented in 90s news broadcasts. The pressure was actively destroying him, so he walked away in the mid-90s. He protected his sanity. Years later, he re-emerged on his own terms. He launched a comedy website. He started a podcast. He takes bizarre, independent acting roles just because he finds them funny. He rejected the tragic child star narrative. He took the joke back. Walking away when he did saved his career and probably saved his actual life. Kel Mitchell found a completely different kind of salvation. His boundless energy drove the defining Nickelodeon sitcom Kanan and Kel. Every kid in the 90s knew his catchphrases. But the transition to adult roles is notoriously brutal. Mitchell weathered career shifts and personal struggles in the 2000s. He focused heavily on his faith. He worked deeply in youth ministry, completely divorced from the entertainment rat race. When he finally returned to family entertainment projects, he brought a totally different energy. He wasn't desperate for validation. He was anchored. He came back to produce uplifting content because he actually believed in it. Shannyn Sossamon just refused to play the game. She brought this standout, offbeat energy to a charming 2001 medieval adventure. Casting directors desperately wanted her to be the next generic blockbuster lead. She said no. She actively stepped back from mainstream studio systems in the late 2000s. She pivoted toward independent features and her music career. You watch interviews with her, and she is terrifyingly clear about her boundaries. She never wanted the suffocating visibility of a global star. She actively dismantles the machinery of fame by just ignoring it. She creates art without begging for a corporate sponsor. She is free. Frankie Muniz took the boldest detour. He anchored the wildly successful television sitcom Malcolm in the Middle. He had an Emmy nomination and 2 Golden Globe nods before he could legally buy a beer. He was set for life. So what did he do? He traded scripts for steering wheels. He walked away from television to pursue professional race car driving. Imagine the adrenaline required to make that swap. You see the sports documentary footage of him walking the track, completely focused. He survived violent crashes, managed independent bands, and lived a life completely foreign to the Hollywood bubble. He grabbed a helmet and chose the fast lane. And finally, Kirk Cameron. His boyish charm made Growing Pains a smash television hit. He was a certified teen idol. But as his religious convictions deepened, the friction between his beliefs and standard network television scripts became impossible to ignore. He didn't compromise. He gradually stepped away from mainstream Hollywood after the 1990s. He built a vast, very lucrative second career producing and starring in faith-based films. Critics mock the production values, but the financial data is clear. He tapped into an underserved market and built an empire outside the traditional studio gates. He proves you don't need Hollywood's permission to maintain a wide audience. The industry wants you to believe that walking away is a failure. It's not. It's the true flex. These actors prove that your life doesn't end when the director yells cut. They took the money, they took the influence, and they bought their freedom. Which of these vanishing acts hits you the hardest? Drop your thoughts in the comments. If you respect the fact that we don't sugarcoat the reality of this business, hit the like button and subscribe. There are a lot more illusions to shatter.